Hi, I hope you all are doing well. This is the video lecture on theories in sociology. So the book does a good job describing three theories in sociology: functionalism, conflict theory, and symbolic interactionism. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time describing them, but I will give you kind of a brief overview just to make sure you kind of get the gist of it at least. If you have any remaining questions, please follow up with me. I really want to make sure that these are clear to you. So first, it's important to note that functionalism and conflict theory are both what we call macro level theories. So they explain things that are happening at a very broad level in society. They're looking at institutions and the structure of society, how power plays out in the structure of society. So these are very broad, working at the societal level. Functionalism essentially suggests that society is made up of different parts and that these parts work together to create stability. In other words, these parts work together to make society function, as the name of the theory suggests. The theory also contends that there's a great deal of consensus in society, that we generally agree on the values and the norms that we're going to abide by. And this consensus, or collective consciousness as it's referred to, helps society go. It's kind of the oil that helps society run smoothly. Now, kind of on the other end of the spectrum, we have conflict theory, also macro in level, but it posits that because resources are scarce in society due to the structure of society, groups and people compete over them. So resources such as income, power, status, occupations, things of that nature. Now, unlike functionalism, conflict theory suggests that there's a great deal of conflict in society. So, excuse me. Symbolic interactionism is different than functionalism and conflict theory in that it focuses more on explaining what happens between two people. So this is a much more micro level theory, much smaller in scale. And what this theory suggests is that people attribute meaning to any given situation, and if they're on the same page, that interaction will go smoothly. But if there's a misunderstanding about that interpretation, then there will be tension in that interaction. So there are two more theories that you did not read about in this unit that are also really prominent in sociology. And so I'm going to cover those now and go over them in a little bit more detail. So the first is feminist theory. Feminist theory suggests that there are inequalities between men and women, and that because men's perspective is dominant in society, it's the lens through which we see the world, women have unique experiences that we actively have to work to see and understand. So this theory suggests that we must actively work to understand society through the perspective of women. So how does interaction happen from the perspective of women? How are institutions run from the perspective of women? I'm really kind of taking an active, concerted effort to put that perspective in the forefront. Another theory that you need to be familiar with is critical race theory. So at the core of this theory, it suggests that racial awareness and racial justice are imperatives. So this theory was first established by the American sociologist W.E.B. Du Bois around the turn of the 20th century. And he theorized that there were essentially two Americas. There was the dominant reality occupied by whites, and then an alternate reality occupied by persons of color. Now, what he suggests is that awareness of this dual existence is important to understanding how society works. He referred to this awareness as the double consciousness. So in a lot of ways, critical race theory parallels feminist theory, and feminist theory parallels critical race theory, and then they're both ultimately getting at how you have to put the perspective of marginalized groups in the forefront when you truly want to understand society. And again, the point of that, the reason why you have to make that conscious effort to do so is because the dominant groups, their perspective tends to be the dominant lens through which we see the world. Now, something else to note about critical race theory is that it has an inherent activist element to it. So it's not only describing and explaining the social world, but also advocating for change towards racial justice. So unlike the other theories that we've talked about or that you read about, this one really does advocate for activism. Okay, that's it. So we very briefly covered functionalism, conflict theory, symbolic interactionism. I also gave you a little bit more to go on in terms of feminist theory and critical race theory. Again, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please follow up with me sooner rather than later. Thanks. Bye.